Welcome to Wannabe Clutter-Free, formerly Wannabe Minimalist, the podcast for busy families who are tired of the chaos, fed up with being overwhelmed, and ready to enjoy life again. Each week, we talk about how to let go of the clutter so that you can focus on the things that actually matter. And it's not just physical clutter. We talk about the mental and emotional stuff too, because if it's holding you back, it's time to ditch it. I share what I've done in my own life to declutter, organize, and calm the chaos, but you won't just hear it from me. There are amazing guests too. It's practical, doable, and simple for those of us that want to be clutter-free. Well, hey there, my friend. Welcome back to the show. My name is Deanna Yates, and you are listening to episode 237 of the Wannabe Clutter-Free podcast. This is the last episode of 2024. I cannot believe how fast this year has gone. I know as a busy mom, you totally understand it too, but gosh, okay, 2025, look out, here we come. But on today's episode, I am sharing one of my favorite episodes from this last year. I know last week I said I'd put together a compilation, but as I gathered all of the interviews I did last year in one place, I realized a couple things. One, there were a lot. And that compilation episode was going to be really, really long. Two, I need to practice what I preach, and I am not going to take on more work than I can handle. And so, I decided that I am already neck deep in getting the second annual Chaos to Calm Summit together for you all. More news about that in the next few days. And three, there was so much good stuff in this interview that I felt it would be wonderful to share just this one with you in full. So that's what we're doing. Now, this interview is one that I did this summer with Kelly Foss from Millennial Minimalists. And not only were her questions insightful, we just had a lovely, deep conversation. And speaking of conversation, if you'd like to join in, well, come find me on Instagram. I am at Wannabe Clutter-Free, or join my private group, the Wannabe Minimalist Family Group on Facebook. And if you like what you hear, I encourage you to also check out Kelly's show. If you like this show and like learning about minimalism, well, you will love her show too. And now, here's Kelly's introduction and interview with me. I hope you enjoy it.
Hi, everyone. Today we are talking about decluttering, organizing, and embracing a more fulfilling life with less. And to lead this conversation, I am joined by decluttering expert and host of the Wannabe Clutter-Free podcast, Deanna Yates. Deanna is a busy mom who teaches families and individuals how to declutter the mess, calm the chaos, and organize the stuff that's left behind. And in our discussion, Deanna shows us how to build and maintain clutter free spaces that we can focus on what truly matters. She believes that decluttering can open us up to a life of freedom we never knew was possible. And she shares simple steps to help us declutter and maintain tidy homes. Plus, together we discuss how to manage mental clutter to make the decluttering and tidying process easier. You will learn that living with less is completely possible for families too, and that it's not about depriving children of things, but rather it's a mindset that helps us all become aware of what's most essential. Whether you are a busy family or individual, be inspired to adopt a clutter free lifestyle and gain the space and time back for the people and experiences that matter most. You just interviewed me on your amazing podcast, Want to Be Clutter Free. I can't express how excited I am to have you on the podcast. We're in the same space, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners listen to your podcast and are excited to have you here today.
Oh, I am excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me on your show and for being on mine. It was a lovely conversation.
Oh, it was so great. Thanks again so much. And I'm particularly excited because you not only speak to individuals, but you also speak to families because you are a busy mom. You have a daughter. You've also lived around the world with your family, and you've been able to do it clutter free. So it's pretty amazing. So today you help families and individuals live more peaceful lives by helping them remove the excess stuff from their life and overcome mental overwhelm, which we will get into. But to start off today, I am so curious about the experiences that inspired you to adopt a clutter free mindset, as well as what inspired or motivated you to help others live more with less.
All right, let's get into it. Well, hi everyone. I'm Deanna, and I think, and I'm a recovering stuff person. I feel like I am or was your typical suburban mom. we had some pretty big shifts when our kiddo was little. So we have a 10-year-old daughter. And I would say that we were somewhat, I mean, I guess we're somewhat atypical. My husband and I have kind of always gone slightly different. We've always wanted to have freedom and like do our own thing. And we never really thought about that equating to our stuff. And so when our daughter was 1, we lived in Boulder, Colorado, and we were working from home. We had a business together, and we literally would sit in the same office across the hall from our bedroom, and we would, look out the window and we'd do all our work, and we would literally never leave the house other than to take our daughter for a walk or like to get out for that kind of a thing. But we didn't have to leave. It was all within
Mm-hmm.
this one space. And at that point we said, why the heck are we living here in this box? We could live anywhere we wanted.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of our travels. And that we decided, okay, when she turns 1, she was like, it was like, I'm going to say it was like postpartum high of just like, oh, this little baby, we can do anything. So we sold 80% of what we owned, put everything we
Wow.
had in a 5 by 8 foot container, and we went and lived in Europe for 6 months. You would think that was the beginning of our minimalism journey, but it actually was not. It was the start, but we didn't really have this concept of let's sell everything we own and just live super minimally. That wasn't even the point of it. It was we want to go experience something else. And we had thought we would actually continue doing that for longer, but
Mm-hmm.
turned out it was a little stressful to live around the world without a safety net and have a baby and, without your tribe and village around you and no grandparents to take over and really not trusting any babysitters or anything like
Yeah.
that. Turned out that was a little more difficult than we had thought. So we came back and we did what we should do. I'm doing air quotes over here. And we bought a house. Neither of our families live close to each other. So my family was in California at the time. Actually, my parents had just retired to Arizona, and his mom is in Iowa. So we ended up living in Iowa. We bought a house there. We had friends there. We thought, okay, this will be great. We pendulum swung, right? We went from
Yes.
having no one around to then now we're going to move where our friends and family are. And this is going to be great. And this is what we're going to want. And our friends and family are super generous. They helped, give us lots of things to fill up our house. We bought a 3-bedroom house. And when you don't own any beds or couches or anything like that, you got to put stuff in it. And so they helped us fill it up and it filled. All of a sudden, then we were just like, oh my God, this is too much. Like things just got really chaotic. And the one thing, so then we kind of like sat there and we're like, what is going on? Why were we one way? What didn't we like about that? Because obviously, if we liked it, we would have kept doing it. Okay, so let's choose some things from there. But what don't we like about this? Because this obviously going the opposite way isn't what we want either. So, what is it about this environment and living situation do we not like? And so it was really nice to be able to see those two back to back. That really helped us kind of solidify like, we just need to pare down. Like, this is overwhelming. This is too much to keep
Mm-hmm.
up on. This is too much to do. Our daughter doesn't need all this stuff. We have a room full of toys, and yet she doesn't play with all of them.
Right.
We were out and about, like when we were in Europe, our schedule was that she and I would go out in the mornings. My husband had a freelance job. So he would work his freelance job in the morning. Our daughter and I would go out. He would meet us for a picnic lunch somewhere generally, and then spend a few hours with us in the afternoon, or she'd go for a nap after that. And then we would work. And then in the evenings, we would spend some time as a family out and about. And then after dinner, we'd put her to bed and we would work from about 8 to midnight on our business.
Wow.
So we had time factored in there for doing all the things we needed to do. And so it wasn't like we just got to gallivant and not do anything. We definitely had to work. But it was just nice to be able to say, like, okay, the schedule really worked for us. So let's pick and choose things from this schedule. But we didn't need all this stuff. We were out and about and we were exploring the
Mm.
cities and we were going to parks and we were having picnics out and we were being outside more. And we lost that when we moved into the house with all the stuff and all the toys. We all of a sudden expected her to be able to play by herself with these toys. Like, what a crazy idea to think that she would go from something she's never done to this thing that, well, isn't that what all kids do? They just go and play by themselves with their toys. No, they don't. They don't. And she
It se
never did.
it seems like the more
Yeah.
stuff that you had, the less experiences you started to have.
Totally.
Mhm.
100% absolutely. The more stuff we had, the less we did outside and the
Wow.
less we wanted to go do because we felt like, well, we have this stuff. aren't we supposed to be hanging out with our stuff, watching TV or playing
Mhm.
with these board games or playing with all these toys or doing all the things we thought, again, we should be doing? And so that's a long story as to how we got into our minimalism journey. And so from there, we have moved around again lots and lots of times. I think we've moved like 16 times in 20 years.
Wow.
From there, we moved to Chicago, and then we moved again, and we did a year and a half in Europe for the next stint, and then we moved to San Diego, and this is the longest we've been anywhere
Oh, wow.
with our daughter. We've been here for almost 5 years. Yeah, yeah,
Wow. So it was really 2 extremes. You lived the
totally.
extreme of living with basically nothing in
Yeah.
Europe and just and being able to have so many great experiences through that, and then coming back to the other side and saying, "Okay, well, let's live this normal lifestyle and let's fill this home." And then then you realize, wow, it's actually this excess stuff that's giving us anxiety. Like we want this level of comfort, but not to this extreme that it takes away these experiences. So I'm curious,
Yeah.
what inspired you to inspire others?
Well, I just felt so much more alive, right? And I
Mm,
wanted other people to feel that. I don't want us to feel bogged down. And I realized that a lot of my friends and family and they were like so amazed that we could do this thing of like, what do you mean you're just packing up and going to Europe? What do you mean you're traveling with a, kiddo? And the first time when she was one, we did have a big suitcase because we had the Phil and Ted's traveler crib and put that inside the suitcase. So we actually
wow.
carried a crib with us. And a diaper bag, and I think that was about it. But they were always shocked, and then they've always been surprised at how I always traveled with just a carry-on and that kind of stuff. And I just thought, huh, I never really thought that was different. I just thought that was kind of how everyone did it. And then when I realized what a difference it made between those two stark contrasts of
Mhm.
like, oh, wow, there's got to be a middle ground here. There's got to be an equilibrium that
Yes.
we can kind of help and teach people that it doesn't have to be this one thing that you think everyone is aspiring to do. I don't think people really are as fulfilled as they think they should be or will be when they get the house full of stuff. So it was just
Mm,
more of like, I want you to be able to really tap into the things that make you excited, that you are excited to get up and out of bed for every day, and that the stuff isn't the thing that's going to do it. And I
mhm.
was a property manager in Chicago, and watching people be so attached to their stuff and
Wow.
knowing that they were going to literally sell a lot of it, get rid of it, trash it, like watching people move out and see how much stuff they left behind to just go buy new stuff in their next apartment was so shocking.
Oh,
And just,
wow.
yeah, it was really interesting watching just that whole transition and how much people would bring in with them and like how much they
Mhm.
felt like they needed. And you could see by that last load on the moving truck, like just how drained they were and just like, oh, like I don't want to do this anymore. And it was just so interesting to see that the stuff they thought was going to make them happy was actually causing a lot of the strife in their own lives.
Mm. Did you see your clients decluttering before they moved, or did they bring the majority of their stuff with them? Because this is the thing that a lot of people
Yeah.
think that the more they have, the happier they'll be. But, our default mode is to always add, but actually subtracting can make us happier.
Oh, yeah. No, there was not a lot of decluttering going
Okay.
on.
And that's a good piece of advice. Declutter before you move, because if you declutter before you
Totally.
move, it'll make your move feel so much easier and you'll also have a fresh new start.
Yes, for sure. It is so much easier that way.
So I'm curious about your own experiences. You mentioned that you decluttered over 80% of your stuff or got rid of
Yeah.
80% of
Oh
your
my
stuff.
gosh.
How was that experience? I mean, was it difficult letting go of certain items? Are there some items that you regret letting go of, or did it make you feel better after?
There's a couple things that we regret letting go of. I will go ahead and say that caveat, but also I think it's a mental hurdle of like the things that we regret. It's more of like in the moment, sometimes we're like, oh, I really wish we had those things. But knowing that I wouldn't have used them for years has helped
Yeah.
me get over those. So, like the biggest one, okay, well, so the littlest one is a sombrero that we got married in Mexico, and the
Yeah.
girls that were there, it was a small wedding. There were only 35 of us, but the girls that were there took me out dancing the night before our wedding,
Okay.
and they bought me a sombrero. So they like came in and they put the sombrero on my head and they're like, "Okay, we're taking you out." And I have a really cute picture of me though with the sombrero and like I'm like, "Hey." And so that part is the memory, but I remember one of our homes along the moving path. I remember having a spot on the wall being like, "Oh, that would be such a great spot for that sombrero.
Yeah.
That is literally the only thought I had. That one little passing thought. But I'm like, do I really need that thing?
Yeah.
No, I don't need the
Mhm.
sombrero. Nobody's wearing the sombrero on a regular day. Like, so anyway, but that's like the littlest thing of just having that like slight pang of like,
Right.
oh, that would be cute. But
Yeah.
then it passes. Right. So I want to let people know those thoughts do still come up. I'm not like, oh gosh, I'm so happy I got rid of everything. And I've never wondered about what I should have or where I should have it or any of that. That's not real life. If you're listening to this podcast, chances are you've faced some hormonal challenges. From the environmental disruptors in our daily lives or monthly PMS symptoms to natural changes like perimenopause and menopause, it's something that we can't escape as women. But suffering through it isn't mandatory anymore, thanks to Hormone Harmony, a formula crafted from herbal ingredients designed to ease these transitions beautifully. Why do I trust Hormone Harmony? Because it's packed with adaptogens, those incredible science-backed herbal extracts that support our bodies in adapting to stressors, whether it's PMS irritability and moodiness or those intense menopause symptoms like hot flashes and night sweats. Hormone Harmony is here to make things easier. But it's not just about easing specific symptoms. With Hormone Harmony, it's about feeling like yourself again, and that's something I've experienced firsthand. This isn't just a supplement, it's a life enhancer. Happy Mammoth, the creators behind this phenomenal product, are committed to uncompromised quality. They only use plant-based, nature-inspired ingredients proven to support women effectively. That's probably why there are over 30,000 glowing reviews from women who feel like they've gotten their lives back. And they're giving an exclusive offer for my listeners. For a limited time, you can get 15% off your entire first order at happymammoth.com. Just use the code WANNA at checkout. That's WANNA. Visit happymammoth.com and use the code WANNA for 15% off today. The other thing we regret was selling our snowboards. So we
Okay.
lived in Colorado and we snowboarded a lot when we were there. This is also pre-child. So, pre-kiddo, we had our own snowboards. We would go all the time to the mountains. When she was born, then we went to Iowa, or then we moved. We actually packed those with us. We
Okay.
actually kept our snowboards because we weren't sure where we were going to be leaving. So in that 5x8 container, we had snowboards in there. Then we moved to Iowa, no place to snowboard really around there. Then we moved to Chicago, and we really thought we were going to live in Chicago.
Mhm.
She was registered for kindergarten before we took off for Europe. That's a whole nother story. But we really thought we were going to live there. Now, living in Chicago, no big mountains around. So it didn't
Yeah.
make any sense for us. And we still had these snowboards. So we finally sold them. So just like the story you told on my show about the trumpet, it was so nice to be able to sell this item and give it to someone else who was going to be able to go and use it.
Mhm.
And it was a couple and they bought both of our snowboards. It was so cute. Like it felt so great letting those go. Now that I live back in San Diego and we've gotten back into snowboarding, I'm so sad I don't have my snowboard, but I can buy another one. And who knows if that snowboard sitting in storage for the last, because now our daughter's 10,
Yeah.
10 years would even be good, right? I
Mhm.
probably would have to replace it anyway. The boots are probably worn out. The board itself, the board probably asked it was a nice board, but I probably would have needed new bindings anyway and all sorts of
Yes.
stuff. So the idea of the thing is what I miss. The
Mm.
thing itself is not really, I can't say 100% certain that that thing would be exactly how I remember it.
Right. Yes. I think the question that you're asking is it worth the cost of storing? It's
Right.
probably not worth the cost of storing. It'll get in your way, especially a snowboard. That's really big and bulky. And as you said, you can just buy a new one 10 years later. You can buy a new one or you can rent it, right? Figure out, okay,
Right.
well, if you're moving again, maybe it's better to rent it so you don't have to bring it to the next
Totally.
place, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah, and you
that's
can
really
rent the newest gear often over times, right? Like if you want to spend a little bit more, like if you're like, oh, but I don't want like the blah one that everybody uses, get the demo board, right? You can get the nicer things, you can rent them where that demo board's going to cost you $1,000 if you buy it, but it'll cost you $70 to rent it. So, or even better, buy one used on Craigslist, or
yes.
something like that, which is often where I like to start, right? I like to start by trying to get it secondhand because you like to keep the circle of production and things like that. I like to be as environmentally friendly as we can. You had asked me one other question though, as we started to go into that. Like, what was it like to get rid of all the stuff?
Yeah.
It was a lot. It was a
Mhm.
lot. I mean, it was like a full-time job, but we had a deadline, right? So we knew we have a plane that is leaving on this day. Our lease in this apartment
Right.
is up on this day. I have a storage unit purchased to come here at this property on this day.
Yeah.
So I think having that deadline made it so much easier to actually get rid of the stuff because you couldn't hem and haw over it, right? You had to make the
Mhm.
decision. Looking back, I wish I would have, and I didn't start this way, I ended this way. So I ended with what's at least $20 or more. Those are the things I'll sell. If it's less than that, just donate it. Like just take the
Yes.
tax write off, just get rid of it, let it go. Like it's not a big deal. And you get to pick your threshold of what is expensive or what's worth it for you. I'm at a different point in my life now. I might raise that a little bit more depending on how quick that timeline was coming or how fast I wanted things gone. But I think we also it's so easy to get caught up in but I spent good money on this.
Yes.
People hold on to it. There's a lot of guilt around that. So my thought on when you sell things is you have to take what the current value is, brand new, that someone can get something, knock 50% off, and that's the price you sell it for.
Mhm.
That's generally my rule of thumb for how to get things to move quickly. And if that threshold is too low for you, then just donate it. Just
Mhm.
because you're like, but I want to sell it for $20 doesn't mean that someone is going to buy it for $20. So that
Yes.
whole endowment effect where we think things are more valuable when we own them because they're our things, quote unquote, is so interesting. So just we got to let go of that idea and just be like, if I were buying this, what would I really buy it for? Yeah.
Exactly. In a recent episode of ours, I talk about my own system for selling things. I'm obsessed with Facebook Marketplace.
Okay.
I love selling things, and you can just look up other items, the same
Yeah.
item, and see what other people are posting the item at as well. And also, when it comes to shopping, I want to add this in that if you are shopping, keep in mind the cost of things. If you're buying a high quality item, you can sell it for half the price, if not more. So it's going to be worth it in the long run. And
Mhm.
Deanna, I love how you admit that letting go of our stuff is sometimes challenging. You sometimes regret certain things. But as you said, it's maybe 24, 48 hours. And then you're like, you know what? It's fine. You come to terms with it.
Yeah.
And because again, you can rent it, you can buy it again. It's not worth the cost of storing. And at the end of the day, like you feel so much more free when you don't have stuff. Like
Yeah.
it bogs you down, even if you don't really realize it, but it is really subconscious. Now, I'm sure a lot of our listeners are thinking right now, well, Deanna has kids. So how does she do this? You help people declutter and organize their spaces, and you argue that it doesn't have to involve, throwing out all your kids' stuff, right? And throwing out all the
No.
toys. It's not about depriving your children of stuff. And so I'm curious, can you expand on this and how you can still live minimally with a family and that it's not about deprivation, but rather it's a mindset?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I say that I'm a minimalist. My daughter isn't, you know. I have chosen this lifestyle for myself and
Mhm.
she at 10 can choose certain things. Now, will she consider herself a minimalist? No. That kid is a sensitive kid. She likes to collect rocks and
Yes.
sticks and treasures and Legos and all sorts of things. But I try to take it with this is a phase, right? This is a life
Mhm.
stage she's in, right? Things are going to change. And as she's 10, right, she's starting to get into that preteen, things are going to be
Yep.
different. She's not going to want to be playing she actually never was into dolls. The other thing that can be really difficult for parents because if you were a doll person, it can be really hard for you to come to terms with the fact that your kids don't like the same toys you do or
Oh.
didn't want to play the same way you played. So having that moment of like just really leaning into what is it about them that they like or what interests them, what are the toys they want to play with, how do they want to play can really help with letting go of the stuff because you are going to have that whole mental hurdle especially as you start to declutter their things. And if you find yourself in a moment of going through their things, I try really, really, really hard not to second guess her decisions.
Okay.
So if we're going through things and we're decluttering, and we declutter twice a year in our life
Okay.
because her birthday is in the summer, so it works out really well for us. But even if their birthday's not in the summer is a really great time because you're off of a break from school. They're transitioning from one grade to the next. So
Hmm.
now you're like, oh, you're going to be a, fourth grader next year, or fifth grader next year. What do you think you want to bring with you as you go to this next stage, right? It just is kind of a nice way for them to be like, oh, maybe I am ready to let go of that because I'm not a fourth grader anymore, kind of a
Oh,
thing.
wow. I like that.
And so thank you. And so we will do that twice a year. And of course, always right around the holidays, it's a really nice time to be like, okay, you're not playing with these toys anymore. Other children could use these things, or, we want to make sure we fill up a bag so that Santa can bring us more stuff. And so that's always a nice way to have these moments where they mean a little bit something more to your kids. Because to be like, you need more space, you need more mental clarity, they're going to be like, what are you talking about, mom? Like, this
Yes.
doesn't make any sense. They have different drives, they have different things that motivate them. And so that has been really helpful. So you hold things up and you say, like, and you do it in short sprints. We do like 15 minutes at a time because
Okay.
mental capacity, they're like, I don't want to be here. So set your timer 15 minutes. Put on some fun, like upbeat music, but try to have it be something like if you're just starting out, you're new to this, try to not have it be something that they're going to like be really into. Does that make sense? You try to find music that's like upbeat and exciting, but not music that they're going to want to like dance and sing to and get wrapped up in the music.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, because we've learned.
You've been there. Yeah.
And so, put on some music, make it fun, be exciting, and be like, okay, what about this thing? Yay or nay? And then if they're like, be like, okay, we've got a maybe box, like put it in there and like
Yep.
have it be a place where they're like, you don't have to get rid of this. This is just our transition. You're going to look at this as we go through the rest of the stuff. But that allows you that moment to not get hung up, not stop, not be like, oh, but I'm not sure. And then that moment of second guessing is really tough. This works for adults too. So like if you're like, I don't know about that thing, just be like, okay, I'm going to put it off to the side. I'll decide
Mhm.
on this later, or I'll close up that box and I'll open it in a month and see how I feel about the stuff in there. Just
Yes.
having a little barrier can really help. And then if they have something that they're like, no, and you're like, oh, but if you catch yourself saying that, like moment of pause or like, but what? No, it now becomes your thing. If you're not ready to let it go, that means it's your thing. They're ready to let it go. So
Yep.
you take it and you put it in with your stuff. We've done that with some books, where she's been like, I don't read that book. And I'm like, oh,
Ah,
that makes me so sad. And so we put it in with our books. So I actually had kid books in my collection of books because I just wasn't ready to let them go yet. And, that part, I'll probably be ready soon. I haven't actually revisited those books in a while, but it is just nice to have some of those things that just remind us of like, oh, that was a really
yes.
cute time in our life. And it's okay to keep some things that you are attached to, but you don't have to keep all of them.
Hmm.
Helpful?
Yes. Have you ever tried noticing what your daughter doesn't use or play with and putting it away for a bit and then letting it go? Or
When
is
she
it
was
always
littler, I did.
okay? Okay.
But like I said, she's really sensitive. So she might not actually play with something for a very long time, but then she'll be like, oh, I really want to play with, like, even this last week,
Right.
she and her friend played with her tea set. She hadn't played with her tea set in years, but they
Hmm.
had so much fun getting it out and making tea and doing this whole thing. And I'm like, oh, that's cute. Like, that would have been one of those things that I would have been like, you haven't played with this in a long time. But every time we ask, when we do I think when you start doing those regular declutter sessions, it
Yes.
gets easier too, because then they're like, oh, but I do have that thing and I do want to play with that thing. They'll start to play with their toys more often too, for the ones that you keep, because they'll be excited about that. That's what's worked in our house. I mean, I know there are other people that they have so much stuff and it is hard and they think my kids never play with these things. So I would recommend doing like a toy rotation. If you find there's a bunch of toys that they're not playing with, sure, go ahead and pull them out. Like take them out of the space so that the room feels cleaner and it's more organized and they can try on this lifestyle of not having as much stuff. And then they can start to see like, oh, that feels really good. And I know what's in here and I know what I'm playing with. And then I would always ask before you donate, depending on their age. If they're 4 or younger, I think you can get away with decluttering for them without really asking as much if they're not sensitive kids. But you never want it to backfire. You never want
Mhm.
them to have that moment of like, but now I want to hoard everything because I've lost something that was really important to me. So I feel like there are these, you need to respect them. They are their own people, right? Like, just like you wouldn't want someone coming into your closet and being like, you never wear that. So I just got
Yeah.
rid of it for you.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you'd be
yeah.
like, excuse me. Like, your kids, I think, do the same, right? So if it's like, oh, you don't wear that. So I just put it off to the side because I thought maybe you would, want to wear other things in your closet. And
Mhm.
you're like, oh, but can I have that dress? Because I want to go somewhere and wear that dress tonight. You'd be like, okay, yeah, here you go. Right. Or the same thing
Right.
with like the tea set. Well, where'd my tea set go? We were going to play tea. Oh, you know what? I've got it right here. Here you go. I just got
Mhm.
it out of there just to give you some more room to, have more space for your things.
I love this example of working with your daughter one
Mhm.
on one because I think some of our listeners who have children, it's difficult. It's a difficult process,
It
but
is.
it's possible. And even my mom, as a daycare worker, she had kids, and obviously she has like 6 or 7 kids at a time, and she would show them, okay, once we're done with this, we're going to put this in this box, and the box was labeled. This is where you put it.
Yes.
And then because kids are moved from one thing to the next thing to the next thing very, very quickly, right?
Hmm.
So eventually, obviously, with them being older, it will be helpful for them to learn how to put things away. But that's definitely a way I think she helped me learn. That's a way to keep the space a little bit more organized. Now, I don't have children yet, so I'm going to play trial and error one day with my own. But I just find that really, really interesting that you have that communication with your daughter, and she's able to realize, okay, I'm getting a little bit older now. I no longer need these items, and that's awesome. That's cool. That's really, really neat because she's learning that all the stuff that she has in her life is not stuff that she needs forever and that she can let go. And one day, hopefully, she can let go of an item with you, sell something, give it to someone else that
Oh,
gets
we've done
excited
that.
about it, and she'll realize, wow, like, wow, me giving away my stuff or donating my stuff like makes other people happy and they can enjoy this. Like that's going to make her so happy, right?
Oh, yeah, we for sure do that, especially with her bigger toys. Like, again, I've talked about the threshold, right? So we did that she actually had a Barbie dream house. This is how we know she doesn't play with dolls. I mean, those things are big. It took up a ton of room in her room. And so it was really great to be able to say, okay, you want this. So she actually wanted the Harry Potter castle Lego set. That puppy's like $400. It's
Wow.
ridiculous. So we used birthday money and Christmas money, and we sold the Barbie dream house. And so she actually had to save up her allowance for it, right? So we really worked together to say, like, okay, you have some of these other things in I think she sold a few other toys too. But it's like, we sold these things you don't want that have a good threshold at them. They're not the $1 trinkets.
Hmm.
And we're going to take that money, and now you can buy something you actually want now. And so that is such a great, yeah, motivator learning experience so they can see, like, oh, I don't have to hold on to these things forever. I can let them go. I can, like you said, sell them and get that money back and buy the things I actually want to buy, even if they're super expensive $400 castles when she's 9 years old.
Oh, wow. That's a fantastic example. That's
Yeah.
great. That's a great story. Now, when it comes to the parents, so there's a lot of parents listening. So let's say, and individuals as well. Let's say they just feel overwhelmed and they've got a lot of clutter. What is your decluttering roadmap? Do you suggest they go room by room? I'm curious what your suggestion is when it comes to starting to declutter and organize a space.
I think you start with the place that is the most overwhelming for you. For me, right now, what's overwhelming for me is I'm currently in our office where I record our podcast. But when I'm working just on the insides of my business and I'm not actually recording, I sit out in the middle of our house. And so
Okay.
it's kind of an open space and I can see everything. I can see the entry, the living, the kitchen, the dining, and then my little desk area. And I'm just like, there's a lot that goes on in this space. So when there's a lot of visual stimuli in my
Hmm.
life, it makes me overwhelmed. And the reason is because all of those things that are out and about are pointing to my brain. When I see them, they represent something. So I need to renew our daughter's passport. I need to pick up that living room. Oh gosh, I've got to change the laundry. I've got to.
Right.
Oh, what are we doing? What's for dinner tonight? Oh gosh, I got to go to the grocery store. All these little things. So anything that's out is going to start speaking to you. So
Yes.
my biggest thing is starting to calm that visual clutter as much as you can. That's like my number one. Like that'll just help you not feel overwhelmed and just start in the room that's the most stressful for you or that's going to help you the most on a daily basis. So maybe it is your closet. If you kind of go in your closet every morning, you're like, oh, I have a whole closet full of clothes and I have nothing to wear, right? If you
Yes.
have that moment, maybe start there. I often find families, it's really helpful to start in the entryway because this is where you start your day. Like when you are leaving the house and you can't find your keys, your kids can't find their shoes, and you're just like frustrated and trying to get out the door, the worst experience ever. And it
Hmm.
starts your day on such the wrong foot, right? You're just like, oh, now you get out. And the first thing, like, to be out in the world and like have all the people and all the stuff coming at you is just
Yeah.
chaos. Like I'm already frustrated and now I've got chaos and now I'm like yelling at my kids and I'm so frustrated and this isn't how I want to leave them to start the day.
Hmm.
I want to have a moment of like, bye, honey, have a great day at school. Love you. Okay. Be here when you get back. That kind of a thing. I
Yes.
want that feeling. And because it's a domino effect, right? If I'm stressed out, it's going to make my daughter stressed out, which is then going to lead her to not have a good day in class. And she's going to potentially, get snippy with a classmate or, not be paying attention because she's thinking about something else, right? So there's all these domino effects. And trust me, I'm not trying to lay on mom guilt here. This is not what we're doing. But if we can just have a minute of like, how can I make my morning better so that I am happier? That's going to make everyone happy, right? We need to put our own oxygen mask on first to help others put their oxygen mask on as they go out into the world. So corral the shoes. Put a hookup for your keys, put a hookup for your purse and the backpacks and the coats. Like figure out where everything can go. Maybe it's just a basket. Like literally all you have to do today, grab a basket and put it by the front door and say, this is where everything that walks in that door is going to go, just right in this basket.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
yeah, that's going to be a mess for the first couple days, but you're
Yes.
going to start to see like, okay, we're going to need a place for shoes. We're going to need a place for the backpacks. I need a place to put the mail. I need somewhere to put my keys. So it's not all in this basket, but you're going to know what you need now instead of going to the store and saying like, okay, I need all this stuff. And then you come home and you miss something because you didn't actually know what you needed. So now you've created more clutter and chaos because you're like, well, now I have all these bins, but they're not the bins I needed. So it's just that part can get so frustrating and overwhelming. Start simple. I love these kind of like dumping bins just to let you know, like become a scientist and observer of your life and know like, okay, now that we've done this for a week, how do I make it better?
Hmm. Hmm. It's really interesting to think that all of that can come, a terrible day can just come from a messy entryway or wet room.
Right.
Yeah, I remember even as a kid, well, it's our laundry room or wet room or
Mhm.
entryway from our garage. So many coats. We had so many coats, and partially my fault because I had a lot of coats, and I was trying to find one coat, and it'd be 10 coats just to find the one, and then it's like, oh, and then I'm looking for my backpack, and it's kind of a mess, and then I just run out the door, and luckily the bus came right at the end of our driveway. Growing up, I was very lucky in that way, but that's not always the case. And as you said, it's nice to organize that space because if it's organized and calm and it's an easy goodbye or an easy exit in the morning for you, it's going to make the rest of your day so much better and more calm. In my last apartment, I had this beautiful piece of art that just said calm. And it was the
Mm,
first thing that I saw when I walked in the door. And today in my apartment, that's what I feel every time I come home. And luckily, it's a very quiet space too. It's like, come home and, we live in a noisy world. We leave the noise and we come back and we're like, that's so nice. And you made me think about something. It's like one of my favorite tips is from Gretchen Rubin, her book Outer Order, Inner Calm.
mm,
She says, if you can do it in 1 minute or less, do it then, because that'll make a huge difference. Just a minute or less. Put your clothes up on the hanger at the end
yep,
of the day. It's so easy to just throw your clothes on a chair that's in your bedroom versus putting
totally.
it up. But again, as you say, hang up your coat. It's going to make the room feel so much more peaceful. And a lot of people think, oh, well, that doesn't affect my day. It does subconsciously.
Totally.
So,
Oh my gosh, it totally does. Because again, your brain is your brain is constantly working through all these to-dos that you have to do, whether you realize it or not. And all those little things, it's going to know, oh gosh, my coat is on the floor. Oh gosh,
Mhm.
I've got this pile. Oh gosh, I've got this. And so many people put off doing the tasks because it feels like such a big thing, right? Because
Yes.
you've let that one shirt become 10 shirts. And that feels difficult, right? Your brain is like, oh, heck no. But if you just do it too, that's my one other thing I love to do is time the task you really hate. Just time it.
Mm.
Like, I don't really like folding laundry, but if I time it, I realize it takes me maybe, if it's a big load, at most 7 minutes to like
Right.
get it out, shake it out, fold it, put it away. 7 minutes? Like, come on. Generally, it's even less than that, which is shocking when you think I've been putting this thing off for a day because I didn't want to do it. But it literally took me 5 minutes while I'm watching a TV show, right? It could take 15 if you're watching a show and you're not really actually doing it, but
Yes.
not a big deal. It's not that much time. It's not that difficult. I always tell myself it's a perspective shift. I tell myself when I don't want to go to the grocery store, I'm like, oh, okay, the grocery store. And I think, well, I didn't have to grow the wheat to make the bread. I didn't have to, raise the chickens to kill them, to pluck them, to cook them, to get them, to do all the stuff, right? I just have
Yeah.
to go and put the stuff in my basket and pay for it and bring it home and it's already done. Like, how lovely is that, right? There's so many steps that we have cut out in our modern world that we just are like, oh, poor us, right? Like sometimes and I do it too. Like I've had a long day. I don't want to go to the grocery store. But you know what? It's okay. I'm going to have food on my table because the people grew the plants and people processed them and made the things. And,
Mhm.
that is so nice that I don't have to do all that. And my family is going to be fed. It's a miracle.
Yeah. So well said. You're so funny. It's so true. And I put together my list of tasks that need to get done every day. And it's always the most stressful or the ones where I'm like, oh, I really don't want to do that. I make myself do it first and then you get it done and you feel way more accomplished.
Yeah.
You feel so
So
accomplished for the
awesome.
rest of the day. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You're like, ha, superwoman over here. Woohoo.
Yeah. Honestly. And that is actually one of those habits that I have integrated into my life. And, when it comes to tiny habits, I don't know if you've read the book. It's Tiny
Oh,
Habits by BJ
yeah.
Fogg. It's one of my favorite books. It's up there with Atomic Habits by James Clear. And in this book, BJ Fogg talks about how the easier we make the behavior, the more likely it will become a habit. And so I'm curious on your end, what are a couple of tiny habits that our listeners can adopt to keep them motivated every day?
Oh, okay. Motivation. All right. Well, I'm going to start with mindset because I
Okay.
think that can be such a big thing before the stuff even comes into our home, right? So let's work on the front end so you don't have to do as much on the back end decluttering because it's okay. I'm somebody that like tells people to declutter. I have decluttered my house. It's a maintenance issue. I still do it. But
Yes.
that big job, like nobody really, really wants to declutter because it's
Mhm.
hard. It's hard work. It's hard mental, it's hard emotional work, hard physical work sometimes. And so let's see how we can stop it before we got to start that, right? So
Mhm.
worry about what you're bringing in. Stop what you bring into your home, even if it's just for a temporary pause, so that you can start using up the stuff you already have. Because once you start using up what you already have in your home, you
Yeah.
realize either one, it's broken, two, you don't actually like it,
True.
three, you could really get rid of that, four, maybe you use it up. And then you're like, oh, I need more of that. That was great. I really liked that. You'll find creative uses for things you never thought of. Like that was one of the things, the biggest eye openers during COVID was like, I could really use things in different ways around our home
Mhm.
that I didn't realize. Or if I didn't use it up during COVID, there was no way I was going to be using it in regular, normal, everyday life. Like if it just, I mean, we were in a pandemic. You couldn't go shopping. You didn't leave your house for a little bit. If I didn't use it then, I'm never going to use it.
Never
So
gonna use
that
it.
was a
Yeah.
really nice way to be able to get rid of that stuff. So if you come across any of that stuff, you're like, I didn't even use it in the last 5 years. I'm definitely not going to use this thing. It's so much easier to have that mindset. But I love to have one errand day a week. So I have
Okay.
one day that I run my errands. The reason this works for me is because I don't like to spend a lot of money at one time. So
Mm.
it helps me cut back on those impulse buys. So if I'm having to do a grocery run and a Costco run and a Target run all in the same day to get all the things we need to live our life, I am way less likely to buy that cute pot at Target or to buy the extra snack at the grocery store or to grab that impulse buy
Oh,
that they just happened to have at the sample that was like really good because I'm already spending hundreds of dollars in this one day. So I know some people that might be the opposite. Like, well, I'm already spending $100. What's another 20? But once you start to go over that next $100 level, you're like, ooh, ouch, that hurts. And your basket's already full and your car's already full. So you don't
mhm.
feel like you need to fill it up with more stuff because you're getting the things that were already on your list. And also shop from a list. I know I heard you say this recently too. And
Yes.
I agree so much. Have your list and work really hard to just shop from that list. And if you forgot to put something on your list, you probably will survive for 1 week without it. You
Yes.
probably have enough to last you for that next week because we often will buy things before we actually really need them, before we're 100% out. So see if you can go for a week, put it immediately on your list for next week, and then try to survive until your next errand day and see if you can actually make it. It's an experiment. Just try. But if you can start to limit what's coming in, it's going to be so much easier to realize what you don't actually need and to start
Mhm.
letting go of this stuff because you're not bringing in as much, right? Like if you're in a boat and it springs and there's a leak, right?
Yeah.
Your first job is to plug the leak. You want to plug the water that's coming in before you bail out the water that's in the boat. Same thing when you're decluttering. You want to stop all of the excess that's coming in the first place.
Mm.
And then you have a clearer mind to start clearing out what's already there. Because oftentimes, if we don't plug what's coming in, we then just fill up the stuff we let go. We're like, oh, well,
Mhm.
I don't want this stuff. It's old. I'm going to declutter it. I'll get new stuff. And you kind of defeat the purpose of letting go of the overwhelm, getting through the overwhelm because
Yes.
you're just replacing.
This is such a great tip. I'm someone who I'll do multiple trips throughout the week, and you're right. I do buy extra stuff because, like you, I actually don't like buying everything all at once in one day. But now I'm realizing, no, it'll actually save me money. I'll be more intentional with what I bring into my house. You're right, because I mean, I live in a city where I walk everywhere. And so I like to, grab food here, grab food there. But you're right, in terms of the temptations, I'm bringing in more. So that's actually a really good tip for me. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Great decluttering tip. I know also on your website, wannabeclutterfree.com, which is fantastic. You have an e-guide. You have a simple 5-step system for helping families and individuals tidy up everything left over in their spaces after they've decluttered. And I'm curious, can you share a couple of these tips? And
Sure.
and on top of that, how can families find time to do so when their time is so limited?
Yeah. Time is limited, right? It's our most precious resource. And I think we often forget that. And we think that we just need to fill it all up.
Mhm.
But really, the moments when we are just kind of hanging out and being together as a family, playing games or eating dinner and having those conversations are some of the most fulfilling. So, oh gosh, number one, I think for us that has helped has been doing one activity at a time. And now
Mhm.
I know like people with kids and families, they often are like, oh, she only has one. That's got to be so easy. Yeah, sure. One is easier than five for sure, but it's all relative, I think, too. And so, what has really helped us is just limiting the number of things we do, right? There is countless things that we could do on any given day. We could be in, five different sports and a music lesson and all sorts of things, but that just wears all of us out and none of us are happy. And then none of our interactions are actually that pleasant because we're just like
Yes.
passing like ships in the night. We're like, okay, God, okay, I left dinner in the fridge. Okay, and you're never having that real moment of connection. Plus, our daughter's 10, and there's so much pressure to prepare your kids for college, even in elementary school, right? Like, we've
Mhm.
done softball, and the parents are intense, and they're like thinking about, like, well, she could get a scholarship. And I'm just thinking, that's a long time from now to
Yeah.
worry about if our kiddo's going to like this that long. And so, just looking at all of the different things we do is more of an enrichment, just more of like figuring out what you like to do And it's okay if it doesn't turn into their career. It's okay if it doesn't turn into this lifelong passion or pursuit, but just giving them the option to try new things. Okay. So that was not even anywhere close to the 5 things I talk about in this guide, but it's just the first thing that came to mind really of just it's okay that we're not like trying to be these huge, high achieving, like alpha families. It's okay. It's okay
Hmm.
to enjoy the time you have together. That's going to make your kids so much happier in the long run, because likely they're not finding their passion at 10. Did you
Hmm.
find your passion at 10? I didn't find my passion at 10. I started my podcast 4 years ago, right? I'm 44. Like,
It's the
it's
pressure to
not
keep up with the
something.
Joneses. Yeah.
It's right. You
Hmm.
just got to figure out, just try different things. And I feel like I'm still answering that question of what do I want to be when I grow up? And I think that's fun. Like I love being able to experiment and try new things and not think that anything has to be permanent. So I think that's really helpful when it comes to families. Just relieve that pressure that you have to have it all figured out and be perfect and your kids have to be super high achieving and getting straight A's and everything has to be clean and tidy and you have to be happy. Cheers.
Yeah.
That's not real life. And just, yeah, have fun with it. Like just be more relaxed and really enjoy the time together. Okay, so the first thing I think when you are trying to calm the overwhelm. So this is my happier home guide of just like it's okay, but really check in on your calendar, right?
Mm.
This has helped me so much because understanding like what I have coming up today. I have 4 interviews today, but it's all on my calendar. If it wasn't on my calendar, I would probably forget one. And knowing like
Wow.
what else do we have today? Okay, so like this week is really busy. We've got actually her activity got canceled this week. So we've got a little spare time, which will be really fun. So we'll have a friend over for a play date on that day. We've got oh gosh, we've got to renew her passport. Like I said, I'm getting my hair done this week. I've got another 4 thing of trainings on Thursday and another 2 interviews on Friday. So life right now for me, I'm in a very busy season, but I'm trying to jam pan like let me re-say that, jam pack a lot of things in before the summer gets here.
Right.
Because summertime, I want to take a lot of time off to be with her. We don't have a lot of camps. We're going to travel. We've got some things planned. So, understanding that life ebbs and flows, not every week is going to be the same. You're in control of your calendar and your life. And if you're not feeling in control of it, take a minute to say, like, what can I let go of? What do I need to say no to? What boundary can I set up so that I do feel in control and I do feel like I'm the person steering the ship of my life? And that is really important, knowing that like April is chaotic for me. So maybe
Wow.
I'm going to let up on some of the things that I might feel like, oh, I've got to, make a home cooked meal every night. Well, maybe I'll cheat a little bit and I'll like half do it, right? Like I'll pick
Hmm.
some already cut up veggies from the grocery store so I don't have to cut up veggies, but I can still make dinner, right? So there's little shortcuts we can add into our life and giving yourself grace to apply those shortcuts and know that I don't have to do this forever. This is just going to be a busy week, busy month, and then it's going to start to, probably not till June until I get to breathe a little bit, but then June will be great.
Yes, yes. It's so interesting that you mentioned your calendar. So I'm the same way. I've made this month is quite busy for me. And I've done that with intention because I
Mhm.
am going to be traveling for a bit in May. And so I need to create that space. So I have quite a few interviews recently, but you're right. Like for me, that's part of the decluttering process. I'm trying to manage my workload in a way that makes sense for me. So it's being on top of things, being mindful with how you're spending your time so that you can open up some space later in your calendar. And I like the fact that you touched on how moms and dads, they always feel the pressure. They're in that comparison trap with other families. They feel like they should always be doing. And even individuals like myself without children, I feel like I always need to be doing and being out there. And I feel in competition with my friends all the time. Obviously, this lifestyle has helped me manage that a lot better. I don't care
Yeah.
as much, but there are still those social shoulds that make me feel like, oh, like I'm not doing enough, or like, which causes anxiety, which causes a lot of mental clutter.
Mm.
And I know that you also help your listeners and other people with that mental overwhelm. So I'm curious, how do you recommend someone manage that internal excess?
Oh man, it starts with figuring out what you actually really want. I totally understand and feel that because my husband and I were in the startup world for a while. And if you want to talk about hustle culture, I
Yeah.
mean, it is do more faster and you've got to be first. And if you're not, burning 9 million candles at once, someone else is going to beat you. And
Mm.
oh, it is rough. Now, I think I've just kind of been like, I can only do so much. And like
Yeah.
you said, with the tiny habits, figuring out the one that is going to make the biggest difference for me, right? Figuring out and starting with those things that are the most important, even if they're the most uncomfortable. And that is generally how it goes. Because if there is something you really want in life, it's because you're not doing it now. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy. In fact, it's going to be the opposite. It's likely going to be very hard because it's not something that you are skilled at, right? Like if you want to lose weight, well, the reason you're not at the weight you want to be at is because you don't eat the way you need to eat or you don't work out the way you need to work out. Those are things that are different than what you're doing now. So it's uncomfortable. If your home is filled with stuff, it's because you have a shopping habit, or maybe you have a hard time letting go of something, or maybe your kids like to bring a ton of stuff home and they don't want to let go of it. Whatever it is, to get to where you want to get to,
Mm-hmm.
there is a chasm there. There is a moment of change. Something you're doing now has to be different in order to get to where you want to go. That is scary. That is hard. But you've got to just put one step in front of the other and just understand that it's a process and it's not going to be perfect and it's never going to be a straight line. It's never going to be from here to there and yay, I did it. If that happens, one, you were either very lucky, or two, your goal is way too easy and you're not actually pushing yourself to do something different and big and bold. And that is okay. It doesn't have to be big and bold, but also don't get down on people that are like, this is hard and I'm struggling. And be like, yeah, it's okay. We all struggle. Like,
Yes.
trust me, we all struggle. We might make it look easy. You might hear us talk about it and we've already gotten there. So, now it does seem easier because you've put in the effort, but it is these tiny habits. It's little things that are going to make the difference. So, how do we get over that? How do we say it's okay to not do it all? You got to pick the one important thing. Pick
Mm-hmm.
one thing, just one thing to go after. And I am one of those people that I want to do it all. I want to be everywhere. I want to experience everything. And I mean, it'd be nice to have some nice things along the way too. But I have to pick the one thing that's most important. And it
Yes.
generally is more, I try to be concrete, but it's not always concrete. It might be, I want to spend more time with our family. Okay, well, how can we do that? Okay, maybe we have game night once a week. Okay, so if we have game night once a week, that's going to give us at least that one night where we're all connecting. Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe we want to have more family time. So I'd like to stop eating dinner in front of the TV so often and have dinner around the dining table. Maybe we're gonna, we do that 7 days a week now where we're just sitting in front of the TV. Okay, can we do that just 3 days a week and 4 days a week we sit around the table? They don't have to be these all or nothing giant swings. They can
Right.
just be these small little changes that over time add up to that big change.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I am a recovering pendulum swinger, we've talked about this, where I go from all the extreme over here to all the extreme over here. And generally, it's somewhere in the middle that's going to give me that happy stasis of like, this is sustainable. Okay, this feels better. So, what are those small habits you can start to make to get to where you want to go? And understand that once you get there, you're going to be like, oh, okay, that wasn't so hard, even though it was really hard when you were in the
Mm-hmm.
moment. But trust
Mm-hmm.
me, when you get to the other end, you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. I can do it again.
I love that you're saying you really need to prioritize what's most important. And I think that once you step back and figure out, okay, what is most essential to me goes back to Greg McEwen's book, Essentialism. I highly recommend
Mm,
everybody
oh,
read that book. It's
love
incredible.
it.
I've also interviewed him in the past,
Mm.
and he has a second book called Effortless. But it's basically, what do you have to do like at work? Like, what are the things that maybe you don't want to do them, but it's essential to you? You have to do that. What else is essential in your life? And then the process of actually letting go will be easier. And as I mentioned in my episode with you, it's really clutter stems from an emotional issue. but it will be easier to make those decisions about your stuff once you understand what's most important to you, what you need to prioritize right now in your life. And when you have an idea of like what's most important and where you should be spending your time and your attention, you'll be less impacted by those social shoulds of what other people
Yeah.
are doing. You're like, well, this is my goal. This is my family unit. This is our mission. This is how we want to spend our time. And this is what makes us happy. So you wouldn't feel the need to be pulled this way and that way by others and seeing what they're doing because you know what you want to do. And even for my lifestyle, I know what's essential to me. One of the things is keeping my place clean. And
Mhm.
luckily, I'm very lucky in the sense that I get to work from home. So I have my own system where I tidy as I go. When I cook, I clean up before I eat. I clean as I go. And I have a system on the weekends where I take 20 to 15, 20 minutes every weekend where I do a bigger clean, but I'll
Yeah.
tidy every single day. And I want to ask you this because you have a tidying e-guide. It has
Mm.
tidying tasks that you do each week to keep your home tidy. And just to give our listeners a sneak peek, can you share a couple of those tidying tasks that you do every week?
Yeah, so I have 5 things that I do every day. I call them the Magic Daily 5, and those are things like I checking the calendar, but we do a 5-minute power tidy every day, and that has been just life-changing for us because you get everybody involved. It is literally 5 minutes. So
Yep.
generally, my husband is cleaning up from dinner. I cook and he cleans. So he's generally like doing the dishes and making sure that's all clean. And then my daughter and I, or our daughter and I, race around and clean up the house. Like we'll throughout the day, like if I see something that of hers that's out, I'll just pop it in this one bin that's like, okay, that's our bin we put away at the end of the night. But we'll generally do that. We'll just grab all the stuff and then we can put it away super easily. We race each other. At the moment, I'm not really doing dessert, but generally we get to say like who gets who, you pick dessert or you get extra sprinkles or you get to pick the show we watch or whatever. And so you pick some prize that's not stuff.
Mhm.
And it gets people on board and it gets you motivated to do that. So definitely a 5-minute power tidy every day. I always check the laundry. I don't always do laundry every day, but I always just check to make sure. Like, do we have anything coming up this week or tomorrow that we're going to need certain laundry items for? Are those clean? Like, because the morning panic of like, Mom, I need this dress or whatever, we're going
Yeah.
to do this. I hate that moment. So I try to like minimize those moments of like, ugh, mom guilt, hate, stickiness and that just doesn't make me feel good. Try to minimize those. So that's like, I'll check the laundry. Generally, I do a load of laundry every other day, but sometimes you need to throw in an extra one. I think a lot of it is just having this grace. So there's 5 things that I do every day. Make the bed, clean the kitchen, check my calendar, 5-minute power tidy, and I check the laundry. Then there's 7 tasks that we do throughout the week. And I try to do one a day. But if life is busy, like this week is kind of crazy, I may not have time to do the one thing I have to do every day. I'll just do them all on the weekend, or I'll do 2 or 3
Mm.
on a day and 4 on another day. And those are the things that just keep our home running smoothly and keep it clean and tidy. One is a 15-minute declutter. I still go through and declutter one area of our home every week just to make sure we're on top of it. It could be the kitchen one week, it could be the living room one week, it might be just a drawer one week. Because as life happens, sometimes you're not always on top of it, especially when you have kiddos and things change and they get sick one day and your whole schedule gets thrown off because maybe they need to go to the doctor and you're just like that wasn't in today's plan, but
Right.
it has to happen and priorities shift and your day gets all thrown out of whack. So maybe things didn't happen. Maybe you just shoved stuff in a drawer one day because you were going to host people for dinner and you forgot about it. And so next week you're like, oh, I got to get back to that drawer. So just building in moments like that and just taking care of things like cleaning the bathroom, deep cleaning the kitchen, those kinds of things are on my 7 list. But you can choose those things that work for you. I just give you an example of what works for me, but there's a blank sheet in there so you can pick your own daily magic 5 and your own 7. And that really has just worked to keep us on task and track without being overwhelming and not feeling like there's just so much that we have to keep on top of, just little bits every day.
Oh, This is fantastic. And I think it's great because you're sharing a roadmap for people and they can take it in and they can follow that. And as you express, it's going to be imperfect, but at least you have some idea of the roadmap that you want to follow in order to keep your place tidy. I like this. What did you call it? The magic
Ooh,
five?
Magic Daily 5.
Love it. It's so great. I think that's super helpful.
Yeah,
Even for
thanks.
individuals, but I know especially with children, it's things change super quickly. So I understand that. And it's so nice to have your perspective today. Now, to start to close our conversation, I want to share that one of the biggest highlights today is that you pointed out that's really come across to me is that when you live with less, you gain the space to have a lot more experiences and a lot more experiences, just even with your family unit and with your friends, because you have less stuff, you're spending less time cleaning, and you have more time back to do the most important things and to spend it with the most important people in your life. So, to close our conversation, I'm curious, can you leave our listeners with a few words of wisdom to inspire them to live clutter free?
Yeah. So you are more than your stuff. Your
Mm,
stuff does not define you. You are worthy of life, regardless of what you have and regardless of what's in your house. Like you are worthy to go after your dreams, to do the things you want to do. And stuff, generally, while we think it is going to be what is going to make us happy, and that's what the marketing tells us, and that's what, we see other people and they seem happy and they have a lot of stuff. So maybe it's the stuff that's making them happy. It is not, is the experiences. Take a moment, go do something fun and see how you feel. How much more fulfilled you feel after doing that thing than the last time you purchased a new pair of shoes or a dress or some home decor for your house. Just compare the two and see what you actually feel after them. And the ones you continue to go back to, I think that's always what's so much more interesting about experiences. I can't tell you how many more times we've gone back to think about the things we've done and where we've been and what we've learned and how we grew and the people we've met along the
mm,
way versus I cannot tell you, like I can tell you 10 years ago, or maybe 9 years ago when we were traveling with her, like I can tell you where we were and the people we met. I cannot tell you the clothes I took with us or the things I bought to take on that trip with us.
mm, yes. Stuff is fleeting. I just
Fleeting.
watched an episode of Mad Men, which is my new favorite series of all time.
Ooh,
And in this episode, there was a beautiful song sung, and the message was the best things in life are free.
totally.
Yeah, this is fantastic. So, where can our listeners find you?
Well, I am anywhere you look up Wannabe Clutter-Free. Wannabe like the Spice Girls song. And so that is the name of my podcast. That is my website, wannabeclutterfree.com. And that is my Instagram handle. So that's where you can find me.
Fantastic. And I have to add, I love your website as well. You have so many great resources as well. So I highly recommend that our listeners check it out. And the next time I'm in San Diego, I am definitely going to let you know because I would love to meet up with you in person. It's so nice to connect with someone else who's in this space, living more with less.
Awesome. Hit me up. We've got a couch.
Yeah. Talk to you soon. Thanks so much, Deanna. Bye.
Cheers. Bye. Well, thanks for listening. That was my interview on the Millennial Minimalist podcast with host Kelly Foss. I hope this conversation has left you feeling motivated and wanting to let go of a bit more and hold on to a bit less. Remember, this lifestyle is a journey, one that I am still working on and trying to get better at every day. The goal is not to be perfect and have the least amount of stuff possible. It is to enjoy the life we have and not let the physical, mental, and emotional stuff get in the way. And I have found, as we discussed on this episode, that although we think stuff will make us happy, it generally makes us feel trapped, overwhelmed, and stressed out. So keep the things you love and give yourself the freedom of less with the rest of it. And with that, I hope you have an amazing day and holiday week, no matter what you celebrate. Next week, I will be joined by Heather Riggs. So many of you love when I talk clothes, so Heather is here to help us with our style so we can declutter our closets and still feel fabulous. Until next time, keep decluttering, let go of a little bit more, and know that I've got your back. I'm Deanna Yates, and you've been listening to Wannabe Clutter-Free. I'll see you next week. Cheers.